Hello everyone and welcome to the Zelda Mailbag. Here with us is a guest for the first time, 𝐓𝐿𝐼. We have Daniel here. 𝐓𝐿𝐼 is also a Patreon supporter. She had a discussion topic, so we're going to start the mailbag out with her question.
What's your favorite art style from any Zelda game?
Do you want to go first, Daniel?
Sure. I really like Breath of the Wild's art style a lot because it's just very painterly. It's just one of those games that I just keep stopping and like playing the game and like the sunset comes and I think I admire the views in Breath of the Wild more than in real life, but it's beautiful. But other than that, I also really like the look of like A Link to the Past and some of the older games. I don't know. It's A Link to the Past in particular is always a big soft spot for me. So that game's there's not much of like an artistic art style, but I don't know. It's whenever I fire that game up, I like it feels like home. I don't know.
How do you feel about Four Swords Adventures on the GameCube? Because it's like,
I like that game's look actually a lot because it's like
the GameCubed version of A Link to the Past.
Yeah, no, I like how that game looks a lot actually, because it's like that. It's got they used a lot of Link to the Past assets and stuff like that, but then added like nice shadowing and more detail, and of course it's a little up-resed, so that's good. Yeah, but that's me. Favorite art style.
All right, I'm going to have to go with RPG, and Sonic Forces in the chat that says Wind Waker HD. I would say Skyward Sword because there's a video that I have of it's a comparison of Skyward Sword in 4K and Skyward Sword on the Wii, and I really love the way that looks sometimes, because like there was a certain mod that I was using that made it look better when you were inside, but when you were outside, it just changed the lighting in a way that like it was good for one part but it wasn't good for another part. But the way that it looks when it's like a close-up of Link and like he has like just the way that the skin tone and the model looked really good. But since that was like an unofficial thing because Skyward Sword's not in HD, kind of like how I was saying earlier, the way that Twilight Princess looked in the Breath of the Wild engine looked really great, but that's not an official game either. So I'm gonna go with Wind Waker HD with Sonic Forces and RPG in the chat. They both said Wind Waker HD, so I'm going to say Wind Waker HD because it looks so good.
It does.
It looks incredibly. Yeah.
All right. What about you?
I think it's a difference between graphics and art style. You know, you can still have the best art style even if you're on the Wii, you know, because it's about the art style and not the graphical quality. So with Wind Waker HD, I think I like the graphics more than the aesthetic, if it makes sense. I'm gonna have to go with Breath of the Wild also because, as I said before, I just love the 𝐓𝐿𝐼 aesthetic so much. I love the language and I love the blue. Like blue is my color and the way it glows. And I love how like in the towers in the overworld that they're like green when you don't take them, but then when you take as Daniel said, the view sunsets that is just like super colorful and tastefully done. And also have a shout out to Twilight Princess, which is like my second favorite art style. I just love the bleakness of it, and the Twilight Realm looks really cool. And again, with graphics versus art style. So if you, as you said, if you look at Twilight Princess in 4K and those comparison videos, I don't know if there's the Twilight Princess 4K. I know there's a Twilight Princess 1080p running on an emulator. If you look at those comparisons, it looks really, 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 really. So I would say those two are perhaps tied for me.
All right. You guys can, if you go to the Google Doc, you can look for a question, or if someone asks a question in the chat, you can take those. But look for your questions while I take this one. So
Sure.
the question I liked comes from Retro Cheats, who asks, do you think there will be a dark world in Breath of the Wild 2? Spirits, Twilight, etc., or time travel? All of you on the podcast. So he wants all of us to answer, but kind of like the Spirit Realm or Twilight Realm or whatever, just like a second parallel world. What kind would you guys like to see? Like, obviously, how the Dark World or Lowrole is just like a darker mirror image of normal Hyrule, but it just like, instead of a lake, there will be a swamp or something. And then the Twilight Realm just kind of like took over Hyrule, but that wasn't necessarily the Twilight Realm.
Parallel worlds, though.
Yeah,
right?
it was just like the Twilight taking over Hyrule. But then like Ocarina of Time had a really cool parallel world, if you want to call it that, where it was like the future and the past and stuff.
That was very cool.
If done properly, I would go with that because I'm a big fan of time travel. There's a part in Breath of the Wild to where it's like you only have a picture of where the memory takes place, and one of them was like it just had these 2 trees, I think, or maybe it was just 1 tree in the picture. But the pictures were supposed to have been from 100 years ago. And if you look at the tree, like there's a small tree in it. And in my head, I'm like, 100 years later, that small tree should be huge. So I was like running around trying to get the memory, looking for this giant tree. Because the previous game, Skyward Sword, like there's literally like part of the game is where you go back in time to plant a seed to grow a tree in the future. And then you go to the future and the tree's huge. So in my head, I'm like, Nintendo, you literally made a game where you plant a tree and then you go to the future and the tree's bigger. And now you have like a gameplay mechanic to where you're looking for a tree that was small 100 years ago. Even Ocarina of Time had it so that like you could plant the beans and 7 years later they would be bigger. So like almost every game they had to where they had that mechanic to where like there's something growing with time. But in Breath of the Wild, it's like, no, you're still looking for the small tree. And I'm like, but that doesn't make sense.
No. But alas.
Yeah. But, so I don't think it was done as good as it could have been with Breath of the Wild. Mostly because the past took place in cutscenes and stuff. But in Breath of the Wild 2, if you are able to either travel to the past, like before it happened or something, like if they did a weird time travel paradox thing, like they did in Skyward Sword, to where like you kill Demise or whatever in the present or the imprisoned, but then you also go to the past to kill Demise again or something like that.
Yeah.
If they do something like that to where like Link ends up, like the Link from Breath of the Wild ends up being the hero from 1,000 years ago that also defeated Ganon or something like that, I think that could be cool because it's like the entire game you're being told about this heroic legendary hero and then you end up being that hero. So I think something like that could be cool.
They did have the Gate of Time in that picture. You remember the Monolith Soft mystery tweets when they were tweeting that they were hiring for a new Zelda, and they had this picture, and the Gate of Time is in that picture. So what if we see the Gate of Time in Breath of the Wild 2? It would be.
There was a news story like a couple of weeks ago, because that news story was like a while back, but there was a new one from a couple of weeks ago where Monolith Soft did something to where like they came out again saying that they like created a new team or they were hiring more people or something like that.
Okay.
But it was also, I think it was around the same time as the Nintendo Direct, because in the Direct they showed off that they were finished remaking the first Xenoblade in HD.
Yeah.
Right.
So maybe like they were working on that and they finished it, and then they began production on whatever the Zelda project was.
Yeah.
I don't know. But it makes me wonder, like, are they helping with Breath of the Wild too, like they did on the original Breath of the Wild? Or are they working on their own entirely new Zelda project?
I mean, they could. You never know.
Yeah. But anyways, you guys.
I mean, I could definitely see it, because I simultaneously want to see a rebuilt Hyrule, you know, like in the Champions Ballad cutscene with the castle town all built up and lively. But I also want to see like a destroyed Hyrule, sort of like the cast. I have image or like fantasy that the castle is gonna like rise up and it's gonna create like cracks stuff and like change the landscape completely and reveal like paths to underground Hyrule. So I kind of want kind of different versions of or two different ways that the overworld could transform, because I keep coming back to Alnuma saying that it's going to be the same world but with new gameplay. So I could totally see it, that stuff is happening like when the castle is rising up. You can still go back in time to the, and it would also be kind of like easy to done because they have already done the entire overworld, and I think that would be very cool and interesting.
Yeah, like it wouldn't take them any extra time to create everything because it's already created.
Yeah, absolutely.
But yeah, like that would be really cool. Ocarina of Time, because you said that you would like to see it remade, but you would also like to see it like destroyed and stuff. I think Ocarina of Time. Sorry, what?
Yeah, not completely destroyed, but like the landscape changing due to like earthquakes when the castle is rising up, or whatever castle is gonna do.
Yeah. I would like it if there was something similar to Ocarina of Time when you're in Hyrule Castle Town and everything is normal and cheerful and everyone's completely fine, and then when you go to the future, like everything's kind of broken and burnt down and there's like re-deads everywhere. I would like to see something like that in Breath of the Wild too, to where it's like you get it the way that it is originally, like Lon Lon Ranch is completely destroyed and the castle and everything's destroyed, or Castle Town, not the castle. But then you do get to see everything remade and stuff. What you mentioned with the earthquake or like the castle lifting up and it cracking and stuff, it reminded me of Skyward Sword, the way that like the temple at the end of it like comes down.
But the
opposite. And like it fits perfectly. Exactly. Yeah, like the opposite. Which there's also concept art in creating a champion to where it's like Ganondorf standing on top of like this huge
looks like
mountain thing
mountain
that
almost
floated up.
Yeah.
So that'd be really cool if they did do that. Which Hyrule Castle is lifting in the air, so I guess like Ganondorf's doing the same thing that he did in Ocarina of Time.
I guess
he's like, he loves his floating castles.
They're fun.
Yeah.
Yeah. I almost feel like we'll just have, rather than like parallel worlds, I think this time it'll probably just be new areas, like underground labyrinths and stuff like that. But I don't know. It's they put a lot of work into the world, and I feel like having to create a second version of that world would be amazing. I'd love to see it. But I'm not sure if they'll go the distance to do that. I don't know.
Yeah. But, there's the interview So like, I think you're right, Daniel, because there's the interview with 𝐴𝐿 when they first announced they were making DLC, and people were asking like, what kind of new land are we going to see, or where are we going to visit next? Because I think people had the idea of like Witcher 3 in their head, to where like you have this huge map, and then the DLC just adds like another huge map to it. But 𝐴𝐿 said something like he loves this version of Hyrule so much that he wouldn't like he wouldn't build another area to do stuff in. He would just give you more stuff to do in the world that we already have. Which is also kind of odd, because if you watch the videos where people like mod the game to where they can go anywhere, and they go to like the landmass that's like to the left of the map or north of the map, there's still like certain buildings and houses and stuff that you can find, but I feel like it's
for decoration, but still like
but like some of it like you would never be able to, I guess
I don't know. I'm not a developer, so
I guess do we go to the next question now?
I guess
Shika,
so.
Sure.
Did you pick out your next question? Did you see one that you liked? Or if you need more time, Daniel can go with his, if he's found one.
Yeah, I'm actually fine with you picking questions instead.
Oh, okay.
Oh, sure. Well, there is a question here from Gus Laz, who is also a Patreon supporter, I think for both of us, actually.
He was in the chat earlier as well.
And he asked, hypothetically, you're the producer of Breath of the Wild sequel. How would you structure the game? Quest style, the players to collect medallions, 2 worlds, traveling between past and present, you get the idea. So this is kind of expanding kind of a little bit more on our last question, but the game's overall structure, where Breath of the Wild structure was just like, here's your tutorial area, you have 4 main locations you have to go to in Ganon, and you can do it where in whatever, you know, order you want. That was that game's sort of structure. But let's say you have to overhaul the whole structure of the game. What's your...
Okay, question, Daniel.
Okay, answer.
You can answer this as well, Shika. In Ocarina of Time... What? Oh, okay, so I was going to say, in Ocarina of Time, you get... Like, you have to get the medallions. They give you the medallions when you save them.
Yeah.
But what is the purpose of the medallions?
Plot MacGuffins.
Exactly.
The medallions are a checklist, basically. Like, that's...
But, like, are they used for anything?
No.
I remember as a kid that I thought as a kid that they were using the medallions to create the bridge to Ganon. They were like melting them together to create the bridge. And I thought that it was so stupid. Like, why do they need all these medallions to just create this stupid bridge? Why couldn't I just hook shot over to the bridge? Why did you have me to get all of these medallions just to create that bridge? I thought so as a kid. I
know in the beta for Ocarina of Time or Zelda 64, whatever, there was like...
Yeah.
There were some screenshots and maybe interviews. I know there's screenshots for sure, but I don't know about the interviews. I may just be remembering it wrong. But like, you would equip the fire medallion and you would get an ability similar to like Din's Fire. Or if you used the fire medallion with the arrows, you would get fire arrows. And then the water medallion shows ice instead of water. Yeah. So like, presumably
arrows,
you would have gotten ice arrows. And even with the light arrows, like, you get the light arrows, Zelda gives them to you, but you also get them in the Spirit Temple, where you're also given the light medallion. So it kind of seems like maybe like those were connected. I don't know exactly what they would have been used for, but that's just in my head what I imagine they would have done. Like the same way that you had the medallions in A Link to the Past that would like cause lightning or an earthquake or whatever.
Yeah.
Like I thought they would have been used in the same way. Otherwise, why were they equipable? Like what would they have done if they didn't give you some sort of ability? But in the final game, are they just like they're not used for anything?
Nothing. I'm telling you, like I think the in-game thing is they've added their power to yours, but
because
nothing changed. Like you don't get stronger from that. You know, nothing changes.
No, you get because you get the spiritual stones. Like you physically need them to open
the door. There's a purpose for them. Yeah.
And the medallions. So like I thought it was something like what Sheikah mentioned, where like the medallions don't make the bridge.
I mean, they don't seem to. He doesn't pull them out and use them
then
like he does with the spiritual stones, right?
When
like,
you get inside the castle, like it doesn't break the barrier because then you have to like go and like set the
areas to break the barrier.
Yeah. So like it's not the medallions that do that either.
No, they're pointless. They're like just little like tokens. They're just little plot MacGuffins. It's
like
to show that you beat that dungeon already.
Well, in that case, for the question, because they asked like what would we do if we were a producer, and they mentioned the medallions, and like so in A Link to the Past, you saved the sages.
Yes.
And they would give you
nothing. They wouldn't give you anything. They're just like, yo, thanks. They'd give you advice.
But then like they would go in there like crystals and teleport away or whatever.
Yeah. Because
But you didn't get anything from them.
No, they didn't give you any item or anything.
I thought they gave you like pendants or something.
No, you get 3 pendants at the beginning of the game, which you need the 3 pendants. You physically need them to get the Master Sword.
So it's the same thing.
Which is it's the same thing. But to answer 𝐓𝐻𝐿𝐴𝐥𝐿𝐴𝐥𝐿 question, well, I'll wait for Jesse to get back since he just decided that he doesn't love me anymore. Why doesn't Jesse love me? Come back to us, Jesse. He's gone. I have to cough. Oh. But I would give, I guess, similar to Breath of the Wild, where you have dungeons throughout the map, and all it is you can do it in any order, but just as long as you beat all the dungeons and then you go fight the final boss. So I guess sure, give them pendants or whatever. It doesn't have to be pendants themselves, but I think Breath of the Wild structure is very good, where it's just like you've got these 4 main objectives and game.
Yeah.
Do it however you want to. You don't even have to do all the main objectives if you don't really want to. That really resonates with me because I like to take my time and just do whatever I
agree.
Lionels yes. The sage 𝐓𝐿𝐴𝐥𝐿𝐴𝐥𝐿 in the chat says the sages give you advice. They do that too, or they just get sentimental with you a bit. But they don't. They just give you these medallions that have no purpose. So yeah. Yeah. But what's our next? I don't know. Do you guys have any ideas for your game structure?
I mean, yeah, I guess I would collect like 8 bottles of water to rehydrate Ganondorf so you can defeat him.
You have to rehydrate him first.
Yeah, you feel kind of sorry for him.
Yeah, see?
You're just like, you're the bad guy.
It's
You need
equipable.
water.
He has it on the C down spot.
Yeah.
And that's also Adult Link inside the Deku tree.
It is.
Yeah.
So, Jesse, what's your game structure look like? Other than bottles of water. Wait, actually, Because that is
No,
your final answer.
my game structure is, I like the idea that was like A Link to the Past and Ocarina of Time and Twilight Princess, to where like you
regular dungeon progression.
No, like you get 3 things, but you can get those 3 things in any order that you want. But you have to get those 3 things, and then
that's more a Link Between Worlds structure now.
But then a big plot twist happens. Like
yeah, exactly.
After you get the hello.
Hi.
Hello.
Oh, I didn't know if you cut out. But yeah, like the way that I like it is you have the 3 things that you get. So like you beat the 3 dungeons, and then like in A Link to the Past, the plot twist or whatever is like you get sent to the Dark World. Ocarina of Time, the plot twist is like you get sent to the future and Hyrule Castle's destroyed, the lake's dried up, the Zora's domain's frozen, all of that nonsense is going on. Twilight Princess, you're talking to Lanayru, I think, after the first 3 dungeons, and then like you collect the things that you need to collect, but then Zant just shows up and like takes them from you or something like that. So I like that, to where like maybe not after 3 dungeons, because then you would see it coming, but I would like at some point like you do something and then there's a plot twist to where it's like,
do you think the Castle Rising would be the plot twist in this game?
Oh.
Or would it happen? Or would it happen?
Maybe like you do your.
I think that would be something at the beginning.
I don't know, it could be cool though. Like think about it, you do certain objectives, you do those. Plot twist happens. A bunch of like the castle rises, and a bunch of other things rise out of the ground too. You know.
No, so I think it does do that, but I think it's like the castle rises somewhere near the beginning of the game, and then Link and Zelda find like they start thinking, okay, like we already knew that there was a bunch of Sheikah shrines that existed below the ground, and now they have this giant cavern that's underground from the castle rising up. So then they have to go and re-explore Hyrule to find the other areas that lead underground.
Cool. That's very cool.
So like at the end of Breath of the Wild, they say like, oh, Vah Ruta is acting weird, let's go check on it. So then you go check on it and you discover like under that lake that Vah Ruta's in, maybe that like when you go explore, for some reason maybe they give you a tunic that like lets you finally have underwater exploration. And then when you swim down, you discover like instead of like the water temple, I don't know why I'm doing quotes, instead of the water temple being in Lake Hylia, the water temple is underneath the lake for like where Vah Ruta is.
I feel like they I would rather it in Lake Hylia though, because
and then
Lake Hylia is not super eventful.
Yeah, but then like
across the bridge, but
we already have like in the Gerudo Desert, like maybe however much time has passed now that there's not a giant mechanical camel that's like trying to kill everyone with electricity. They had time to go and excavate all of the sand from the Spirit Temple, or not the Spirit Temple, but the Arbiter's grounds.
Right.
So now instead of being covered up in sand, it's like now there's the giant temple there that's been excavated correctly. And then maybe like a giant avalanche happens on one of the snowy mountains, like whichever one you want to pick. And that uncovers an underground cavern to go to like the ice temple or whatever they want to call it.
Right.
So I think it's going to be like, that's what I actually think is going to happen, that the castle rising up reveals an underground cavern under the castle. But then whenever they go check on Vah Ruta, presumably, from what Breath of the Wild, the way it leads off, that like it doesn't make you think that they're going to check on Vahruta because they literally tell you that's what they're going to do. So whenever they go and check on it, they discover a second underground cavern, and then that makes them think, oh, well, where are the rest of them?
Right.
So
Yeah.
And then the game's exploring everywhere, trying to find all of the other caverns.
Yeah.
But I'm rambling. I'm sorry. You guys talk.
It's okay. I mean, I agree with you. I think that's a very cool structure. I would go for something similar. Yeah.
Cool.
Mm.
All right. Do you have another question, Daniel? We can do 2 more questions.
2 more. Okay. So
I'm trying to look up stuff about the medallions because they have to, like, there has to be a point. Like, there's a reason they're in the game, right? Like, they can't just be completely useless.
And yet...
Maybe... Okay, so my head canon.
Okay.
Until I can find something different. It is... Okay, so, like, you can talk to Saria when you play the ocarina. So, them giving you the medallion is their way of being like, oh, if you have this medallion, we can talk to each other.
Right.
Kind of like Tetra gives you the pendant in Wind Waker, and she talks to you through the pendant.
Counterpoint. What if instead of Farore's Wind being its own item, that's what you could use the Force Medallion for? Because it has the wind symbol on it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, kind of.
And if the Forest Temple is like the first temple that you go to,
right,
then that would make sense that you would get it from the first temple. Because if you get something that helps you teleport out of a dungeon at the very end of the game, there's no point to it. But if it's the first temple that you go to, then there is a point. And then you also get the fire arrows around the same time that you would, because like you beat the fire temple and then you go to the lake, and so like that's about the same time.
Yeah.
But the ice arrow, I don't know. That's at the end of the game. I don't know. But that's interesting though. I like
but
it.
The ice arrows are like kind of they're optional, right? Like you.
Yeah.
Is someone in your house?
No, it's just a ghost.
Oh, okay. That's normal. Okay, well, here's a different question here that's on our mailbag. Zelda
No.
What? Okay, wait, whoa,
you have me
sorry.
thinking.
Sorry.
Okay, sorry. I'm reading the thing about the medallions on the Zelda website. So it's got me... What would the Shadow Medallion do then? So presumably, if the red medallion was like Din's fire, or the fire arrow, the ice medallion, or the water medallion was the ice arrow, light medallion, light arrow.
Sure.
Forest medallion is Faru's wind or whatever. Maybe the spirit medallion was the one that like shields you, protects. What's it called?
Yeah,
Nehru's love.
Yeah.
So what would the shadow thing be?
So, I don't know. Shadow medallion.
The shadow arrows, maybe. Maybe arrows that just like vaporizes enemies in the same way that light arrows does in Wind Waker, like traps them in shadow go or something.
That would be cool.
That would be spicy.
There's nothing in the game that like hides you, like the stone mask,
right?
And Majora's Mask, like, because like maybe. Like it's the opposite of what the Lens of Truth would do, to where like the Lens of Truth lets you see things that are invisible. Maybe this would let you be invisible.
Or maybe that was like a prototype before they made the Lens of Truth. They had the Shadow Medallion. I don't know. No, that wouldn't make sense because you'd need it for the dungeon.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true.
So
people in the comments, give us your idea of what the medallions could do. And you continue, Daniel. Give us the question.